All right, I'm Chad Smith. I'm your Regional Education Manager for West Central Florida for Coldwell Banker Residential Real Estate. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about getting listings with traditional farming. All right, so suggestions for traditional farming. A couple things we do, is particularly in our sales pro, we talk about virtual farming and traditional farming. We're going to focus on traditional farming today. And farming is basically a method of establishing oneself as a real estate expert in order to generate business leads. The traditional method of farming does this through ongoing targeted marketing to specific local geographic audience. Again, reason that we're kind of focusing on that during this month is twofold. One, as most people know, listing inventory has fallen dramatically. And it's not just because the season's over. We do find that our season tends in Florida to be a peak listing period in the early winter months, somewhere around December, January, through about March, April, and then we go through our sell-off, and then we kind of go into our slumber months here of the summer. However, one of the things that we picked up statistically is that we're seeing year-over-year listings are down, and that's quite interesting. And I've seen marketplaces where listings are down 30%, sometimes even over. I saw one the other day. It's a segment of the market specifically was 51% down over year-over-year listings. So what that indicates to us really is it's not a bad sign. It just means that we're getting into a more normalized market. We're not seeing these huge flood of people trying to sell their homes, particularly at higher prices, what they paid back in 05 and 08. We're getting into a normal marketplace. And when you get into a normal marketplace, what that means for individual agents is it's going to get a little bit more competitive. They're going to have to be a little bit more strategic in what they do. And I also like to remind people it's what I call getting back to basics. Getting back to the basics of real estate. And traditional farming, a geographic farm, is truly a basic function of our business. And every agent should be engaged in some farming of some sort. The reason for this is it's going to help you through these periods of time when we start to see listings a little tougher to get. If you become the specialist in a marketplace, you're going to be the go-to person. If you have not done any farming, when times get lean, you're scrambling. Whereas the person who's been doing farming has got an ongoing source or pipeline for listings with a farm area. So that's one of the reasons that we're really focusing on that at this point, is because of the lower listing inventory we see. The other reason is right now is a good time to start a farm, because what you can do is between now and December, when we start to see our peak listing period again and the what I call the season for listings comes open, you can establish yourself as a specialist in that marketplace. So you've got a good 6 months here to work on the marketing into a farm area and establish yourself as a specialist in that marketplace and pretty much grab the market share when the time comes in December, January, moving forward to the listing period. So that's kind of the twofold reason why we're focusing on farming right now. So there's 7 steps we're going to review today specific to, well, we got a little, there we go. Specific to our farming, step 1 is selecting that audience, that target audience, and step 2 is kind of tied in with that. What's the actual target market, your geographic area? Then we're going to determine our audience size, and that's going to be based on a few things we have to take a look at, such as our business plan. Step 4 is going to be obtaining contact information, and then once we have that contact information, getting it in and setting up a contact database. Then we want to become a specialist in the marketplace, and as we become a specialist in the marketplace, we're conducting our target marketing campaigns. The whole idea behind farming is the analogy of a farm. You're going to plant some seeds, you're going to fertilize them, you're going to water them, and you can sow them, and you're going to reap a crop. And that's what you're doing with these 7 steps. You're finding your farm area to plant the seed, plant the ideas, plant the marketing, maintain it, fertilize it through contacts, and then reap the benefits. So steps 1 and 2 we combine together here, talking about selecting your target audience and your target market. Your audience obviously is going to be people with homes to sell. That should be your target audience when you're dealing with a traditional geographic farm area. You're looking for people with homes to sell. Well, that naturally means we're going out to the neighborhoods. So therefore, your target market will be a geographic area with single-family homes or condos or townhomes or any kind of a residential property like that that you can focus on. The key to this area is making sure that you're selecting areas that are similar in type, makeup, price range, etc. By doing that, I can select multiple areas that don't have to be contiguous, touching each other. They could be out, a couple miles apart, some different types of different subdivisions, but they all have the same type, makeup, and price range. Because what I'm going to do is create a nice inventory with this farm area of similar makeup, and then I can take buyers and move them from spot to spot because I kind of control that segment of the market with my farm area. So that's the reason we want to kind of stay focused. Some examples of target markets, specific. For example, single-family homes in a gated subdivision, price range $300,000 to $500,000. I can focus on condominiums, maybe located along beachfront property in the range of $800,000 to $1.2 million. Or maybe I'm going to focus on townhomes in golf course communities in a price range of $100,000 to $300,000. Now, a lot of this is also, like I said before, is going to be dictated simply by your marketing plan, your business plan, excuse me. Your business plan that you created at the beginning of the year, you went through and figured out exactly how many units you were going to need to sell and list this year, and that was predicated on you determining your average sales price and your average commission. So your farm area really needs to be somewhere around or above what that average commission is. If you had an, average price. If you had an average price on a property that you determined for your business plan was running somewhere around $300,000, yet you went out and farmed an area of $200,000 homes, you're kind of defeating your business plan right off the bat. So when you make the decision on these marketplaces, particularly with these price ranges, try to focus around what your business plan dictates or higher. If you go higher, then that just means you just have to do fewer units. So that's going to help you determine your audience and your target market a little bit. Before you finalize your decision on that target audience and market, you need to do some specific analysis. One of the things I like to tell everybody is to remember that this is a business decision. I've seen lots of realtors come through the industry and the business, and they choose their target farm areas and their markets with their heart and their feelings. They look at the downtown district area, think it's a great up-and-coming area, it looks really neat, and they'd love to farm that area. However, if they really analyze it, it probably didn't maybe meet their target price on their business plan. And therefore, again, they're defeating their business plan. Or they pick just their neighborhood. Your neighborhood's a fine place to start, but what if there's no sales occurring in your neighborhood? What if your neighborhood is a stabilized neighborhood and you just decide to farm it because it's your neighborhood and you feel comfortable there? Well, you may be making a bad business decision. That could result in financial disaster if you're pumping farming and marketing money into a neighborhood that you're never going to get a house sold in because there's no houses selling. So we really need to do some analysis before we make a final decision on any farm area. I think this is one of the most important things you can do for yourself when you start to build your farm area. So the first thing we want to do is study turnover rates. Turnover rate is basically a ratio of how many houses have sold in the past 12 months to the total homes in the particular target market. So for example, there's 100 houses in a subdivision that you are intending on farming, and you find that in the last 12 months, by looking at the MLS, only 5 homes have sold. Well, a 5 to 100 ratio means that it has a 5% turnover rate. My personal recommendation is that you try and locate areas that have 4% or better turnover rate. And this will make a little bit more sense when we look at some specific numbers as far as production in a particular farm area. But if you get into the 3 and the 2 and the 1% turnover rate, bottom line is you're just not going to have enough homes that are coming on the market in those areas, particularly with competition that you're also going to be dealing with as far as other agents. It's going to be very difficult to make that a profitable proposition if you're in there at a 1, 2, or 3% turnover rate. Even 4% makes me a little skittish. But 4% or better, I can handle. Be leery, too, of high turnover rates. You get into a marketplace and find a 20% turnover rate, everyone might get excited about that and think, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I got 20% turnover rate. Well, you got to stop and ask yourself, is that the peak of something big, or is there something going on in that neighborhood that's causing that turnover rate, and maybe values are falling rapidly too in that marketplace as a result of everyone leaving that area for some reason? Sinkholes, who knows what it could be. So just be cautious when you're picking that turnover rate that you don't get greedy and say, oh, it's got a high turnover rate, that must be a fantastic place to be. You need to do a little more digging and realize why is it having that turnover rate. But if you see in a marketplace of 4, 8, 10% turnover rate, somewhere in that range, that's pretty normalized, and it's going to produce something that's going to give you enough profitability to make it worth your while to actually go into that marketplace. So you want to continue your analysis and do a 3-year trend study of your turnover rate. I wouldn't just stop at looking the past 12 months. I would do a previous 3-year trend study. And here's why. July 2014 through June 2015, I looked at a neighborhood, found 4 homes sold, 100 homes were in that marketplace, that farm area. That's a 4% turnover rate. So I do a 3-year trend rate, and mind you, that looks pretty good, 4%. I'm like, oh, okay, that might be satisfactory. But then I go back and I look, well, the previous year to that, July 2013 to June 2014, 7 homes sold, and there was that 100 houses that were available in the market, but 7% turnover rate. I'm seeing a declining rate. Let me go a little further back, and I now look at the next year, 2012 through 2013. 10 homes sold, 100 homes in the marketplace, there's a 10% turnover rate. So I'm seeing a declining turnover rate, 10, 7, and 4. It's a countdown there. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to completely discount this marketplace, but I might want to do some further analysis. Why was this neighborhood doing this? Was the neighborhood maybe stabilizing, and maybe it's not appropriate to farm at this time? You'll see this in neighborhoods where maybe you find a large baby boomer population, and that baby boomer population is empty nesters, and they are selling off those homes that they lived in for the past 20 years and raised their kids, and they're moving out. And the elementary school in that area is highly desirable. And so as you look at the demographics and you do a little deeper study, you would find that the demographics indicate that most of the people that have now moved in there over the past 3 years on those 10, 7, 4 homes that sold were millennials, young kids, just starting their families, good elementary school. How long do you think those people are going to stay there? You know, the national hold time right now on properties, according to NAR, is about 9 years. A little bit of that has to do with our underwater properties, but that's what we find is that people tend to stay put for a little while. Why? Situation like that where you have an elementary school that's highly desirable, maybe even the middle school. Those people might be there for 6 to 9 years, letting their kids go through those schools and getting older. So they're not going to be moving anywhere, and it's what I would consider a stabilized area where you're not going to see much turnover. So if I jumped in there now with my marketing and I'm dealing with this 10, 7, and 4% turnover rate, I'd be concerned that the following year might be a 3 or 2%. And I really don't want to put money into a marketplace that's only going to have 1 or 2% turnover. Again, it could be the opposite. Doing my 3-year trend rate, I might find that the most recent was 10, the year before that was 7, and the year before that was 4. I'm at a nice peak. That'd be a great time to jump in there and enjoy the benefit of high turnover. But it may only last maybe another 2 or 3 years before it starts to decline again. So you really need to monitor this turnover rate and see what's happening, and particularly over a trend period. It is preferable, as I said, to have an increasing or a stable turnover rate. You don't want to jump into a marketplace where the turnover rate is going to bottom out on you. The next thing I need to do after I've looked at my turnover rate is I need to study market share. So once you've found a target market with a suitable turnover rate, then you should review who has the market share in that particular target market. This can be accomplished by reviewing the listing agent for each of the sold homes that occurred in the past 12 months. So in our example before, I was looking at a 5% turnover rate. There were 5 homes that sold in the last 12 months. Well, in any of your MLS systems, when you pull your sold list of sold, you should be able to find on that list of sold somewhere along the results list or on each of the individual listing sheets, who was the listing agent on that property. That's what I want to know. I don't care who the selling side was. I want to know who the listing agent was, because that's who I'm having to go up against in this neighborhood. So I take and analyze that, and I find that there was 10 homes, let's say, sold in a neighborhood. And I looked at those 10 solds, and I find that 4, and by the way, that 10 homes sold, if that was in my 100 house neighborhood example, that's a 10% turnover rate. I might be really excited about that. But when I come in here to this market share and I dig deeper with market share, I find that 4 different agents listed only 1 of the sold houses each. However, one agent, Susie Super Realtor, she listed 6 of those sold homes. So I know that Susie has about a 60% market share. That's pretty intimidating, pretty significant market share for her to hold on to. And we see this sometimes. What I need to decide is whether or not Susie's really a formidable competitor. So I'm going to do a 3-year trend analysis also on this. I'm going to go back on those other solds over the previous 3 years that I pulled when I was doing my turnover rate analysis, and I'm going to see who had the properties listed in the years before. Was this a fluke? Did Susie suddenly just jump in and get 60% market share today because there was no one that really could compete or was even trying to compete in that marketplace? Or has Susie had pretty significant market share for several years, and I find out through my own research, maybe I Google Susie, find out who she is, what company she's with, what her skill set is. I even find out, does she live in that neighborhood? You know, maybe Susie has lived in that neighborhood for 30 years, and she's been a realtor for 30 years, and she's got that market share for a good portion of that time frame. I need to take a step back and consider, can I, in fact, unseat Susie from that market share? Can I take her on, and can I remove some of that market share from her and give it to myself through my marketing efforts? And again, that's a decision you have to make for yourself individually out there on whether you do that. I can honestly say if I was looking at that marketplace and she had 60% market share and she's had that for a while, I'm not sure I would invest my money because I'm not sure it would be a wise investment. I might not get enough of a return on that investment having to try and take that market share away from Susie. And I know a lot of you probably are thinking, yeah, but that exists in a lot of marketplaces, so it's going to be tough to get into a farm area. I honestly will tell you, I've done some studies, and I can tell you, very rare as you see somebody with that kind of market share. That is significant. Most of the time, in a lot of places, it's real haphazard. You'll find 5 houses sold in the neighborhood, and all the agents were different listing agents. That's an opportunity. So if I get into a market where I do a quick market share study, maybe a 3-year trend, and I find no one has more than 20% market share, that's an opportunity. So that's usually my kind of rule of thumb is somewhere around the 20% or less. I'm going after it. If I found the turnover rate was fine, I'm going to go after that marketplace. Once I start seeing 30, 40, 50, 60% market share, I start, obviously evaluating it a little deeper, and I probably would, it would really depend on how strong that market share was and who I was going up against. But it becomes a personal decision. So your final decision for farming this target market is whether or not you can take the market share away from Susie. Place had good turnover rate. The question is, can I take it away from Susie? Now, if you don't want to do a lot of this analysis yourself, we've got a great partnership with Agent Mailings, and you can find their webpage at www.agentmailings.com, or you can go into CB Florida and access it through there. Just search Agent Mailings in the CB Florida intranet site. Agent Mailings will do a couple things for you. They'll tell you what the turnover rate is in particular markets, and they'll give you a indication of whether they're already servicing another agent of ours in that marketplace. They're going to give you exclusive rights through them to market to that marketplace. Now, that doesn't mean other agents can't go in and farm that area. They're welcome to. What it means is Agent Mailings is only going to market for you in that farm area and nobody else. So they'll give you that indication and turnover. The only thing they won't give you necessarily, I think they may be changing this, or they may be working on giving you market share, telling you who has market share in that particular area. So if they don't provide that, that's something you'll have to do additionally on your own. And then once you determine you like that particular area and you purchase their services, they'll take care of the marketing for you directly into that area. So that is a great option for you if you're not wanting to do all the analysis yourself, or even doing specifically the marketing stuff yourself. You can use Agent Mailings as an opportunity. So step 1 and step 2, kind of the same thing. We're looking at our audience, determining our audience, we're determining our market share, determining our target market, and then we're going to look at our market share and our turnover rates in those specific areas. Then we move on to step 3, which is determining how big an area do we really want to work in. What is the size of our audience and our target market? A couple recommendations. 1, limit your number of properties to those that you can make email or direct mail contact with every 1 to 2 months. I personally, my preference is every month. I know that some will go, and skip a month, do it every other month, but I like to target my market at least once a month. If I'm not doing direct mail, at least there's some other activity going on. That's what you want to make sure is you're staying in touch with them at least once a month. And try to get into that marketplace in person every 4 to 6 months, twice a year, 2 to 3 times a year. That will give them you in person. They'll have a visual of your face and everything at their doorstep. That's the best way to do sales business anyways, is toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, face-to-face. So try to get in there every 4 to 6 months. And if you're looking for a number for homes to start at, a 150 to 400 homes or condos, et cetera, is a good range. The reason for this is, as we'll mention later on, and when we talk about the specifics of the marketing pieces, you really need to have a 12-month commitment. When you go into one of these areas to start your target marketing into a farm area, you need a 12-month commitment. This is a farm area. When I plant a seed, I don't have a crop the next day. It takes me a while to get the crop. So the same thing's going to apply here. It's going to take a little while for these folks to get to know you, to recognize you as a specialist and trust you enough that they would be willing to turn over their property to you for sale. So if you go in and you're doing a very large area, 500 to 1,000 houses, and you're a brand new agent in particular, your budget may not be able to withstand that for 12 months. It may only be something that you can hang on for 2 months. And once you've done that for 2 months and you decide I can't afford anymore and you quit, you kind of waste 2 months of money and you're not going to reap anything. So don't get greedy on this. I've seen a lot of agents make that mistake. They come in, they look at the numbers, and they jump all over it and say, oh, I'm going to do 3,000 homes, and they make it for 2 months, and the next thing you know, they're out of the business. So this is all going to be, again, based on what your budget dictates, your business plan. But that's a good number, 150 to 400. So this will be determined by your annual and monthly marketing budget that you have in your business plan. I really hope everyone has a business plan for this year, and if you haven't developed one, I hope you jump on it now to finish out the year, and for sure start 2016 with a business plan and a good budget. Something that's broken down into monthly increments so that you can see exactly what you're spending on a monthly basis, particularly in the marketing area. Remember, real estate is a methodical, systems-based, numbers-oriented business. On the surface, everyone sees it as let's go look at the beautifully staged house on the water and have some finger snacks and all. But behind the scenes, it's a business.